Hey everyone, welcome back to 996 The Howl. We are at the 70 game mark of the season, the last progress report of the season. The next report will be the season review, and hopefully it's only the regular season review and not the whole season review. Utah's still battling for that last wild card spot. What's unfortunate is Utah has enough points to be in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but not enough for the Western Conference. In fact, the first wild card spot in the East has the same number of points as St. Louis, who is at the second and last wild card spot. But for the past 10 games, Utah is 5-3-2 at the 60 game progress report. There is 6-3-1. So you really need to get that 6-win mark in these 10 game blocks. Those three regulation losses against New Jersey, which was game 61. Does anyone remember that game? Seattle was a second regulation loss, and then the third regulation loss is the game that we will not talk about. Utah is 32-27-11, 5 games above NHL 500. They're 19th in the league in absolute points, and also 19th in the league in points percentage at .536, which has increased from .525 in the past 60 games. So Utah's been doing better. They've been maintaining that pace. I don't think it's enough to grab that spot. They need to unlock this next gear, and hopefully what we saw in that Tampa game, which I loved. I love that Tampa game. It reminded me of how Utah was playing before that Seattle game. Even though they had two overtime shootout, was it over both overtime losses, or one of them was shootout against the Leafs and Chicago. If they had 2 extra points in these past 2 games, they'd only be 2 points behind St. Louis. If they won against Seattle and then got and beat Chicago in regulation, that's 3 points. It would only be 1 point behind St. Louis. So obviously you start to really zone in on games, and okay, if they should have beat Chicago, grab those 2 points. They only got 1 point. That's a misstep. They should have beat Seattle. They're well below the playoff line, but they got 0 points out of that game. So you really start to target each game in a vacuum. But overall, they should have won that Seattle game, I agree. But other than that, the New Jersey game, they're coming off a 3-game win streak. They got New Jersey they were playing well at that time. They're not playing well anymore, I believe. But yeah, that Seattle game they should have won. The game that shall not be named, obviously, what are you going to do there? You're on the road. You got to lose at some point. That's a game where you pencil in a loss. But the Seattle game, you don't pencil in a loss. You should have grabbed 2 points there. Even though in a vacuum, I didn't really mind that game too much. We go to goals for per game. They're at 21st in the league. It's slightly up from the 60 game mark. But again, one of their Achilles heel this season is they're not scoring as easily as a playoff team should be. It seems like a struggle for Utah to get those pucks behind that goal line. And sometimes when they do get the puck behind the goal line, maybe it's called back. I mean, we had a few goals waved off against Vancouver. When Carcone was pushed into the goalie and Gunther scored, that was totally waved off, not even reviewed. And then against Tampa Bay, what was it, 2 goals called back? One off the glass, which you could barely, that probably should have been called a goal. And then the Keller goal where McBain was pushing the goaltender, another questionable call. So definitely, that's 3 goals right there. Maybe that would have bumped them up higher. Goals against per game, it's up at 2.97. It's 18th in the league, so almost at league average. Again, the game that shall not be named was the culprit for raising that number up. Power play is slightly down at 14th in the league. It was like around top 10 throughout the whole season, but slightly been down. Going back to goals for per game, they only scored more than 3 goals 3 times in these 10-game blocks, so they're struggling to get over that 3-goal hump. Goals against per game, more than 3 goals 5 times in the past 10 games. So definitely need to lower the opposition scoring below 3 a game. The power play, they had 0 power play goals for 6 of these past 10 games. The power play could be helping them, but it's making the game harder and harder when you don't score a power play goal. I understand you can't score a power play goal every time you're on the ice, but it has to help you in some games. There's some of these losses where a power play goal against Seattle, get a power play goal, boom, you're in overtime, you get a point, maybe you get two, and that could be the difference of making the playoffs and missing it. Penalty kill, pretty much the same, 13th in the league. Again, they're pretty high throughout the season. It's still pretty good. They're perfect on the PK 5 times in the past 10 games. For me, just a little bit undisciplined. Like Ian Cole had 2 penalties against Buffalo, some penalties here and there. They probably shouldn't have taken. Just be a bit more disciplined, especially heading down the stretch where you need wins. And some games are against some top teams in the league. Like, you cannot let them go on the power play. We saw that against Tampa Bay. I think they got 1 or 2 power play goals. Lethal on the power play. You got to not give them those free opportunities. Save percentage down. Wait, that's the biggest swing on this board. 19th in the league. Obviously, that game of the big culprit there for that swing. Shooting percentage, pretty much the same. It's low for Andre Tourigny's team. It's usually really high, top 15, top 10 in the league, a 23rd in the league in shooting percentage. Again, it's just execution. They play well. We'll get to the individual players later. They play well. It's just the puck needs to go across the line. I like what they're doing 5-on-5, maintaining possession in the offensive zone, cycling the puck, putting on pressure, forcing turnovers. But at the end of the day, the puck needs to hit the mesh, and it's not really doing it this season. Shots on goal per game, it's been increasing the past 30, 40 games. They're now at around just slightly above league average, 14th in the league, but that's pretty much stayed the same. I love how the shots on goal for is above the shots on goal against. That wasn't the case at the 10-game mark, 20-game mark in the past 3 seasons of Andre Tourigny. Shots on goal against league average, well, slightly above league average again, but that stayed the same. It's pretty interesting how through 10 games, that number stayed the exact same. That's pretty funny. Face-off percentage, still top 10 in the league. Great stuff by Utah. And hits per game at the bottom of the league, but it's been slightly increasing the past 20, 30 games. I think in the offseason, Bill Armstrong has even mentioned it, they need to get bigger up front. So expect some big bodies in the forward group starting next season. So we'll go to the individual players. Leading the way is Clayton Keller with 77 points in 69 games played. He is 9 points away from his career high of 86 points. Why is that number important? 86 points. Well, that's the number of points he had last season, and that is the Coyotes' all-time record for points in a single season. As Coyotes fans, we were always waiting for Clayton Keller to get that number 1 spot. Currently, he's tied with Keith Tkachuk at 86 points. Tkachuk did it in the 1996-1997 season, so it would just be great, an individual milestone for Clayton Keller to hit that 87 points. So he's 10 points away. He reached a career high in assists at 53. His previous career high was at 49 assists. And so he did that in about, 13, 14 games less played than his 49 career high. Nick Schmaltz, 57 points in 70 games played. He also reached a career high in assists at 50, and he did it in 9 less games played compared to last season. I'm loving Schmaltz. Schmaltz is going to be the player. He's going to have the question mark around him in the offseason and next trade deadline. He's one of the few players who's going to expire. He has 1 more year left on his contract. There's always been rumors. Do they need to move on from Schmaltz? I'm loving how he's been playing. This season, it's not his best season on paper in terms of stats. He's really close to eclipsing it. But for me, this is the best Nick Schmaltz I've seen since he was traded to the team I follow in the fall or winter of 2018. The way he takes away pucks, stick lifts. He has unbelievable chemistry with Keller. He's always had great chemistry with Keller. But looking at that Tampa game, him, Keller, and Cooley, I don't know how Schmaltz is doing his job, and to replace him, to ruin that chemistry with Keller, Like, that's going to be tough. Like, it has to be a great trade, and I really don't want to talk about that trade. That's off-season stuff, but I just want to praise Nick Schmaltz. I really love what he's doing. I feel like he doesn't get that love around the team like other players do. Maybe because, like, there's that, uneasiness of whether he's going to be on the team long term. Cooley and Gunther. Cooley's only played 63 games out of 70. He missed 7 games to an injury. And Gunther's played 58 games, missing 12 games with an injury, but they're still third and fourth on the team in points. Gunther leading the team in goals despite missing 12 games played. Gunther at 25 goals, 24 assists, 49 points. And Cooley reaching a career high. He reached a career high in points, yes, like a long time ago. I think it was game 52 or 53. He eclipsed his point totals from last year. But against Tampa Bay, he scored 2 goals, hitting that 21 goal mark. And his career high is 20 goals. He reached that last season, but he did it in, he's only played 63 games, was 82 minus 63, 19 games. Gee, he reached his career high in goals in 19 games less played. Is that math correct? 63 plus 17 is 80, plus 2, 19. Wow, that's unbelievable stuff by Cooley. He didn't get any points from games 61 to games 66. He had 0 points. The coach made remarks. Then he got moved up to the top line, I believe, and then he started to get going, got rewarded with moving up to PP number 1. When he came back from injury, he was settled in PP number 2. But in the past 4 games, Cooley has 6 points, including a 3-point game against Tampa Bay. He really unlocked that gear the past 4 games. He needs to continue it. Other player, well, let's finish with Sergachev, leading the defenseman, 13 goals, 32 assists, 45 points. He's been reaching career highs. He reached a career high in goals. Some other notable players the past 10 games, Kevin Stenlund, 7 points in the past 10 games for a 4th liner. He's a Stanley Cup champion. Look at these games recently. Sergachev has elevated his game. Stenlund elevated his game. They know what it takes to elevate, reach the playoffs. They want to get back there. Like Sergachev, I don't think he's ever missed the playoffs in like 10 years. Stenlund just won his Stanley Cup. He wants to get back to the playoffs. They've elevated their game. So I'm loving that Stenlund and Sergachev have been leading the way. Gunther only 5 points in the past 10 games, but it's really hard to harp on Gunther. He's scoring big goals, and the Utah Hockey Club still undefeated in regulation when Dylan Gunther scores. Barrett Hayden, 5 points in 10 games. Yeah, we need a little bit more from him. Carcone, 5 points in the past 10 games. McBain, 5 points. Krause, 2 points. I know he scored 2 big goals recently against Detroit. That was a big goal to really break the game through. And then like 13 games ago, he scored the game-winning goal against Chicago where it was tied 1-1 and you thought it just Utah was going to lose this, but Krause comes through. Just need more from guys like Krause, McBain. Doan's got 4 points in the past 10 games. I know this line is amazing. The way they gather momentum, generate offense, put on pressure, their forecheck, that McBain, Doan, and Krause line. All the analytics say they're an amazing line. They just need to put the puck in the net at the end of the day. Like, that's your 3rd line. They shouldn't be playing like a 4th line. That 4th line role across the league is they get you energy, they get you momentum, then you put the scoring lines out, ride that momentum, and get a goal. But that 3rd line, they just need to put the puck in the net. I love the way they play. Like, it's just unfortunate how just the production and execution just isn't there with the line. And if they continue the way they're playing, the analytics tell me the goals will come. But we're running out of runway here. There's 12 games left. So, I love the way they play again. But at the end of the day, it's about numbers, and big number needs to go up. Kerfoot, 4 points in the past 10 games. Can't really harp on him. There's just something missing. Like, just a little bit more scoring, but where is it going to come from? Are people going to complain that Keller only has 24 goals, even though he's had a couple 30-goal seasons in the past? Like, Gunther and Cooley are doing their job. They haven't even played 70 games played. Does Nick Schmaltz need to be at the 20-goal mark? Hayden has 39 points on his season, and that's number 6 on the team. Number 7 on the team is Kesselring with 26 points. The next forward after Hayden, so remember, Hayden's 39. The next forward is McBain at 22 points. That's a 17-point gap between Hayden at 39 and then the next forward at McBain. Like, there's a huge gap there. That can't be a huge gap. Like, forwards need to be gathering points. They can't all be fourth liners. So at the end of the day, that's what's bringing down the goals for per game. Their power play needs to be a little bit better. Maybe you might say the defense needs to score more, which I agree. It seems like only Sergachev gets goals and points. Like, maybe guys like Marino and Dursey need to step it up. Kesselring, maybe he needs to step it up. But I really don't look to Marino and Kesselring to gather points. I'd rather them just be good defensively. Oli Mata, he does a wonderful job defensively. I don't care about his offensive production. So maybe it is Dursey. Maybe Dursey needs to help. If, maybe with Michelli in the lineup now, he's played 2 games in a row. I've liked his game. Maybe he steps it up and gets some secondary scoring. But there's something missing in the goal scoring department there. So let's move on to the goaltenders. Vejmelka reached a career high in wins when he got his 19th win of the season. His career high before that was 18 wins. Now he's up to 21 wins. He's 21, 18, and 6. Great goaltending numbers. A .907 save percentage and a .253 goals against average. Unfortunately for Ingram, he checked himself into the player assistant program. I loved what the fans did. It's been all over Twitter. They got a bunch of fans to sign letters and to give a huge box of letters of Coyotes fans, Utah fans, NHL fans, writing letters just to give him some hope and to hang in there. And we're all praying for him. He's in our thoughts, and hopefully he recovers to 100%. Because of that, we recalled Jackson Stauber, who's 2-1-1. Maybe we see him this week. They got a back-to-back against Tampa and Florida, Thursday and Friday. I mean, Vejmelka needs some rest. We saw some rust, against that game we're not going to talk about, but he came back excellent against Buffalo, and he played pretty well against Tampa Bay as well. I think only one goal, I was like, come on. I think it was like a glove save from the slot, a clean shot he just didn't really get. But Vejmelka's been giving the team the best opportunities to grab 2 points. We'll see if we see Stauber, but Vejmelka started all 10 games in this 10-game block. That is unheard of, and he's pretty much going to start the next 12 games as well. So, we're looking at Vejmelka playing 20 out of, the last 22 games of this season, which is a huge workload. I'm sure all the coaching staff and management are doing the analytics and running probabilities of when is this guy going to crash out, because we're giving him so much load. Maybe he won't. Maybe Vejmelka's up to the task. The defense has been doing a great job. Just needs to be a tiny bit better. They're 18th in the league. You could be a little bit better there. Maybe stop taking undisciplined penalties, Ian Cole. But other than that, I love watching Utah. That game, the last game of the road trip really was tough to swallow. Really put my mood in the dumpster. But to come back after that with back-to-back wins against Buffalo and Tampa, they got one more home game against Detroit Monday before going on a road. It's a 3-game road trip, so it's not long. So, I think they're playing great. It might not be enough for the playoffs, and that's okay. St. Louis, look at these numbers. 11-2-2 since the Four Nations break. That is the best record in the NHL since the Four Nations face-off. So if there is a team to grab that last playoff spot, I'm happy that it probably will be St. Louis. They're playing like they want it. They deserve it. I'd rather it not go to a team undeserving for that spot in Calgary and Vancouver. I do not think they deserve that spot. I would like to see Utah climb above Vancouver, climb above Calgary. They're 1 point behind Vancouver, 2 behind Calgary. The last game of the season is against St. Louis. So Utah, that game might be it. That game 82, that might be the deciding factor for the playoffs. Since the Four Nations break, in comparison to St. Louis, Utah is 8-4-2. So they're just about 3 wins away from matching St. Louis. Where do those 3 wins come from? I've already mentioned that Chicago overtime loss, that could have been a win, brings them up to 9. That Seattle game, regulation loss, if they won that, which they should have, that brings them up to 10. And then you're only, what, 1 point, or maybe you're even with St. Louis if you got, well, no, they got 1 point from that Chicago game. So you would only be 1 point behind St. Louis if you won against Chicago and won that game against Seattle. And then you saw the game in hand against St. Louis, and your last game of the season is against St. Louis. So if you just maintain pace, you could control your destiny. And that's how tight it is. One game, one regulation loss against a weak team could, prevent you from making the playoffs. But I'm excited. I'm loving this. I'm loving these games. The next 12 games are going to be so exciting. You're so excited for that, puck drop time, and you're just glued to the screen for a full 2.5 hours if you're watching the game live as it happens. So that's it for me. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, spread the word. And as always, thank you for your support.